The hill rose out of a belt of pine like the back of a whale, and on its crown sat the observatory, a concrete drum with a split metal dome. The road up had long ago surrendered to lichen. Tires left no marks there anymore. The air grew thinner at the top, not with altitude, but with absence, as though sound had been drained from it and stored under the roof. Inside, dust lay in drifts like gray snow. The floor curved gently. Any object set down would roll toward the center, toward the great mount where the telescope used to rest. Only the cradle remained, a ring of steel teeth tilted toward the slot in the dome. On the wall, chalk lines crossed and overlaid one another in a web of white scratches. Some ended abruptly where knuckles had hit concrete. The ladder to the catwalk flexed with a dry whisper. From up there, the slit in the dome showed a rectangle of cloudless sky, too pale to be natural. Birds flew outside the aperture and vanished when crossing the frame, erased as if the slit were a mouth that preferred small, winged things. A narrow service door had been painted shut. Beneath its seam, wind breathed out a faint smell of wet metal and old film stock. The lock plate was cold enough to burn. When the door shivered, not opening so much as relaxing, a stair revealed itself, steeper than practical, angled as though built in a hurry by hands that didn't know fear. The steps ended at a chamber with no curvature. The ceiling was low enough to brush hair. On a table sat boxes of glass plates, each holding a frozen, clouded square. Lifting one toward the slot of light revealed not stars, but eyes, hundreds, small and oval, filmed as though submerged. They were arranged in spirals, each spiral pointing to an inner void that felt like a mouth. The observatory hummed, though no electricity ran here. The hum rose and fell like breath. On the catwalk again, the sky inside the slit deepened, darkened, then moved. Not clouds, something closer. The chalk webs on the wall vibrated, releasing powder that drifted down like ash from a quiet fire. The slit narrowed on its own until it was no wider than a blade. The hum ceased. In the silence that followed, the room felt as if it had closed its single eye. Outside, wind returned to the pines, but the hill held its breath, waiting for the dome to open again. South of the hill, the earth broke open into a pit rimmed with rusted rail. A freight elevator hung over the dark like a forgotten cage. Someone had left a lantern on the platform. Its glass was cloudy with fine crystals that had grown overnight, creeping across the surface in fern-like patterns. The descent took forever because the shaft carried no echo. Depth did not announce itself. When the cage stopped, the floor was smooth and glittering, white as packed snow. Salt walls rose in soft waves, ripple-marked like an ocean paused mid-breath. A narrow-gauge track ran away into a tunnel faintly lit by its own crystals. The air tasted clean and dry enough to mummify thought. Stenciled arrows on the ceiling pointed toward Gallery F. The gallery widened into a wide room where miners once ate under strings of bulbs. Now the bulbs were cocooned in frost-like growths. Tables stood as they'd been left, tin cups fused to their tops by accreted salt. On the far wall hung a map lacquered in mineral shine. The tunnels branched like veins, but there were more lines scratched into the varnish with a nail, doubling back into places the printed plan never conceived. Boot prints lay on the floor, ending at a wall. The wall there was smoother than the others and warmer to the touch. Pressing an ear against it revealed not machinery or dripping water, but a distant, steady scrape, as if something on the other side were sharpening itself on the earth. In a side passage, the ceiling pressed low, forcing the back to bend. The crystals here grew in flat sheets like scales, shedding salt snow at the slightest disturbance. At the bend, darkness developed a texture. It was not absence but presence, a velvet mass that didn't recede under the lantern's sour light. The track vanished into it as if swallowed. Returning to the cage was simple. Rising back toward the world was not. Halfway up, the elevator slowed, though no hand touched the lever. The lantern dimmed, its flame leaning toward the shaft's black. The salt air turned wet on the tongue, briny like a marina in storm. Above, the square of light narrowed. For a moment, the shaft felt horizontal. Gravity decided to forget, then remembered, and with a jerk the cage reached the rim. Salt flakes clung to the boots long after the pit had been left behind. When the wind shifted, they chimed softly, the sound of distant cutlery rattling in drawers below the ground. The hospital's west wing had been condemned after the flood, though the water never reached it. The corridor lights there clicked on and off at a schedule no electrician could master, illuminating walls painted a green that belonged to another century. Plastic sheeting sealed certain doors but billowed inward when no breeze moved, as if the rooms exhaled. Floor polish held footprints like fossils, treads interrupted mid-stride at thresholds, toes turned toward vents, heels smudged where someone had slid without falling. The smell of antiseptic lingered without source, clean the way a sealed jar is clean. Somewhere, a cart's wheel ticked in place, catching on the same nick in the tile over and over. The records room should have been empty. Metal shelves divided shadows into narrow bays. Folders sat upright, swollen with damp, their labels inked in a hand that preferred tall letters and little space between them. On a desk by the window lay an inventory bound with a strap. The dates moved backward as the pages turned forward, ending with entries written for days that had not yet arrived. A narrow service corridor connected the records room to the operating theater. The pass window into the scrub area showed a reflection that did not match the hall behind it. The tiles in the glass were cleaner, newly grouted, the clock frozen at a minute before the hour. In the real corridor, the second hand limped forward, dragging a scrape each time it moved. Inside the theater, the lamp hung low, its enamel shade stippled with rust. The table was dry. The drains were not. In one stainless gully, the water looked thick, as if considering a second state between liquid and glue. The lamp's reflection trembled inside it with a patience not found in glass. The floor sloped almost imperceptibly toward that drain, a concession to gravity no architect had drawn. On the gallery seats above, a folded paper hung on a bent coat hook. Unfolded, it proved to be a map of the hospital's basement service tunnels, similar to the mine plan but drawn with a pen that faltered. A small black door had been added where the morgue's corridor should have ended. The door on paper was taller than the hall. When the west wing's lights cycled again, they chose off and stayed there. In the dark, the drains breathed, out, then in, as if the theater were submerged under something that hadn't learned it was not water. The train ran on a loop between suburbs and a city whose towers reflected only their own windows. Inside the cars, plastic seats shone with a film laid down by years of coats. The schedule board at the terminus read on time in every slot, though no times were listed. At night, the line emptied. The doors hissed shut and opened again for no one. The intercom clicked on with a thread of static, then off, leaving the tunnel's dry side to finish the sentence no voice had begun. The ride between stations 9 and 10 lasted exactly 4 minutes by the watch. The tunnel lights spaced themselves at steady intervals like rosary beads. But on a certain pass, the tunnel between 9 and 10 did not end. The watch kept time, the count of light poles exceeded reason. The car settled into a lower hum, a contented drone of a beast that had found a temperature it liked. Outside the darkened windows, maintenance alcoves flashed by. In each, a figure faced the wall as if reading something printed there. The same figure, repeated, tall and thin, shoulders slightly wrong beneath a worker's vest. The PA chimed, a hospital tone misplaced on public transit. The map over the doors lit one more station than the route owned. Its icon pulsed, a small square at the very edge of the line, a platform labeled in letters so pale they needed eyes accustomed to dim rooms. The car slowed into darkness and did not stop moving. The platform slid along outside as if it, not the train, were in motion. The tall figures turned from their walls to watch it pass. Their faces were not faces. Between two carriages, a door that had never opened admitted a breath of cold, river-smelling air. The watch ticked. The second hand refused to cross into the next minute, hovering above it like a bird refusing a wire. The car lights dimmed and revealed their real color, a tired yellow neither warm nor cool, the exact shade of thin curtains in a motel room that sees only one kind of guest. When Station 10 finally arrived, the platform was the same as always. The board announced on time. The map returned to its proper shape, but beneath the soles the carriage floor held a new pitch, sloping almost imperceptibly toward the coupling and the dark seam that led between cars. North of the suburbs, a reservoir drowned an old town, leaving chimneys, a few stone thresholds, and the bell tower of a church whose clock had stopped the day the valley filled. In summer, the tower's windows floated just above the surface. In winter, ice swallowed them, a white lid over a sleeping mouth. The path down to the water crossed a field where reeds grew in sickly clumps. Wind pushed their brown heads into a single direction, though the clouds above traveled another way. On the shore, found objects gathered, bottle caps furred with lime,